Okay, folks, so we're in Photoshop now, and I think the first thing we have to ask ourselves is why are we here? Why are we in Photoshop? Well, especially with a logo, right? Everybody always thinks logo is vector and it should be crisp and clean, and you want to make it any size you want, and you're totally right about all that. But there's this little thing out there, you may have heard of it. It's called the internet, and then this other little thing called TV. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to produce our logo. We want to get it ready for print for sure, but at the same time we want to get ready for things like the internet, and we want to get ready for things like television. And those usually they always work with the RGB color mode, where print tends to live in that CMYK spot color world, right? So what we want to do is we just want to prep this the right way so we can watch it, on TV, so we can see it on the internet. And then, along with that, we might go ahead and just add a little bit of extra Photoshop flair, Photoshop magic to it. Not too much, but just a little bit of something, so we kind of enhance it a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is go over here to image and mode, and I'm going to go and click on RGB color, and it's going to ask me a question, whether I want to merge my layers before the mode change. And I'm going to say, no, don't merge. So not going to merge, okay? Layers are still there. As you can see, the layers look like groups now, and inside of each group, you can open it up and you can see, what things are. So we can turn eyeballs on and off. That's just how they come over. They come over. Illustrator layers come over as groups over here, and it's just because while Illustrator has layers, everything is independent at all times in Illustrator. For example, this M in this medical group, that's an independent object if we think about it, right? Because that's just a vectored object, and it's not touching the E at all. It's got free space around it. So that's a live, free, independent object. But in Illustrator, it can just group it with something. Photoshop doesn't think that way. So everything is in a layer and a layer and a layer and a layer. So it comes over in these folders, also known as groups. Again, we're familiar with them because we saw them in our last assignment, the color wheel. So anyway, so let's go ahead and let's grab something like the rings, and I'm going to apply a layer effect to it. So let's put something on there like, I don't know, how about a drop shadow? And I'm going to increase my drop shadow just so we can see it. I'm going to take the size down, and I'm just going to move it. Now, what's that all about? So that's just me moving the angle and the distance around, but I'm just controlling it on my own, right? So I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to pull this in one direction or another. A lot of times you see a drop shadow and it's kind of like pushed over here. This could possibly work, except it might interfere with what we see here. That might kind of look a little odd. A lot of times too, a drop shadow is a little softer, and it's kind of tough to tell on this checkerboard background. So I'm just going to build a new layer here. Oops, not a new layer group, just a new layer. And I'm going to fill it in white and drop it all the way in the back. This is just going to let me see things like my drop shadow and understand what it is that I'm doing. See, that's way easier to see now, and that's kind of nice. It's just subtle. It's a hint, not too much. You don't want too much. That's the thing. And I think I want it to go straight up and down. Okay? I'm going to increase my opacity a little bit more. See, and this is what we don't want. We don't want it to be too much, because then it'll kind of have this weird, like, dark aura. I don't want that. I don't want that at all. Just a little bit is all I'm looking for. And then the size, I can grow that, or I can go ahead and shrink it. And I just want to grow it a little bit. I just want it to be a little soft. That's it. Okay? I can even play around with these things, but, you got to be careful. You might not like what you get. Like right now, I am so not liking what I get, so I'm going back here to this, and I'm just going to leave this as is. I am not using global light. I'd like to point that out. Just not doing it at all. And I'm going to say okay to this. Now, I like that style so much that I think it might work really well on this container here in the center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this drop shadow, and while we were applying layer styles to a bunch of layers at once, I just want it on one. So I'm going to take this drop shadow thing, this one right here, and I'm just going to grab it. I'm going to hold down the Option key, and I'm going to drag it right up to this thing that says Animals and Center Container, and just drop. And I held down the Option key, so I made a copy of it, and there I go. Now, the only thing about this is that I'm going to go back into here, and I think I'm going to bring the opacity down a little bit. I just don't want it as much, so I'm going to make it about, maybe take 10% off of it to about 20. And do I even need it? That's a question. You know, the more I think about it, the more I'm going to say, I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to throw that away. I don't think I need that. Okay, so drop shadows in place. How about other stuff? Well, I kind of want to see what it would look like if I beveled my text here. And so I'm going to select my Countryside Veterinary logo here, or excuse me, layer here, and I'm going to go into bevel and emboss. And see, I just wanted to bevel a little bit. And that is actually, that's a pillow emboss. What does a bevel look like? Let's do an inner bevel. Okay, not too bad, not too bad. And let's play around with my contours here. Let's increase it. No, too much, just a little bit. Only need a little bit of bevel, that's all. I'm liking that. I think that's working out pretty good. I don't want global light because I don't want it to be the same. When I change the highlight mode, let's make it screen. Yeah, let's do that. And again, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on. Those little highlights it's giving, like right here, that's really nice. So I'm going to say okay to that. And I'm going to try to see if I can make that work exactly that same way on Medical Group. And it does. And I wonder if it could work on the pause. And it totally does. It totally works. Could this bevel emboss work on the rings itself? Well, it's on there, but I don't see much that it's doing for it other than kind of like putting some funky highlight on the edge. So I don't think so. But on the other pieces, it's pretty good. Okay. Now, I'm done. I'm done, quote unquote, enhancing this thing. And you might be like, really? That's it? And the answer is, yeah, that's it. I don't want to enhance it anymore. I've modified it enough, in my opinion. So I'm done. So I'm going to say File and Save. Now, what I do need to do, though, is I need to create 2 versions of this that could probably be used on the internet and or TV. So the first one is going to be what we call a PNG. So I'm going to say File and Save As. And so my format down here is PNG. And let's go ahead. I'm going to make a new folder here, and I'm going to call it PNG files and create. And I'm going to call this logo 1, but I'm going to call it large, LG, and say save. And then this window is going to pop up, and it's going to ask me some questions. So it's going to ask me about compression, and I really don't want compression, so I'm going to say none. And it's going to ask me whether I want to interlace my data here, and I'm going to say none as well, and say okay to that. And then when I look at this thing, and I find my final files, and I find my PNG, this is what it looks like. And if I drop this, let's say, inside of Photoshop, it's a single layer, right? Layer 0, right? That's what a PNG is. But do you see how it's on a transparent background? And that's what we really want. So I'm going to go ahead and close this now. Now let's come back here for a second, because one of the things that I did is I saved this as large. So let's go to image and image size, and I'm going to make this smaller. Right now this is 1800 by 1800 pixels. So I'm going to go ahead and make it smaller. I'm going to make it about 600 by 600 pixels. Okay? And I don't need to resample my work. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn that off, and I'm going to say I want to work with pixels here. Oh, actually, I can't when I don't resample. That's okay. I'm going to just work in inches then. I'm going to make it 2 by 2, okay? And say okay to this. Now, it changes the size of my image. But what it didn't change, though, okay, is it did not change those pixels. See, that's the thing. I do need to resample this if I'm going to go ahead and I want the pixels themselves to get smaller. The reason I want the pixels themselves to get smaller is because, again, I'm doing this so this can go like on the web, right? So inches mean nothing there, right? This is not for print. Inches is a print thing. Pixels, that's a web or a screen thing. So anyway, I'm going to say okay to that. And then it's going to appear to get smaller, and that's okay. I know we always don't want things to get smaller when we're, dealing with Photoshop, but that's okay in this instance. And I'm just going to go ahead, I'll save it as a PNG file again, and this time I'm going to call it SM for small. And say save. And none for the options here, and say okay. And there we are, right? And I'll backtrack a little bit just so we're back to full size. So we have that. So now let's go ahead and save this as a JPEG. Now, the difference between a PNG and a JPEG is a JPEG looks like this. It's flattened. It will have the white around it. So I can flatten it myself, and I can then say File and Save As, and I can pick JPEG from the format down here, right? That works. Or I could have it do it for me. I could have it flatten it for me. I always flatten my own. I feel like that works out the best for me. So I just, think that is probably the best way to go. So I'm going to make a new folder, JPG files. And same thing, logo 1, LG, because it's going to be large. And when you're working with JPEGs, keep that file size as high quality as possible. So a large file or 12 maximum for the quality, and do not play around with any of these format options. You just want it standard. The optimize and the progressive will not work with all browsers, and so you could run into lots of problems with that. So we're going to say okay to this. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my image size, and I'm going to make this smaller and say okay, and say File and Save As, a JPEG in the JPEG folder. Oops. I want to call it small though. Okay. And there I have it. So I have the following files. I have my AI files. I have my logo that's layered. I have my regular CMYK logo. I have my I have a different layered logo. I don't know why I have two. I have my gray logo. I have my spot logo. And then I have the tri logo as well. So I got all those. EPS files, CMYK, grayscale, spot. Let's see. PDF files, CMYK, grayscale, spot. All those are associated in printing, right? Then I have PNG files, right, for web, transparent ones. Then I have JPEG files, right, for web, transparent ones. And then I have a PSD file so I can go ahead and edit, right? So now that I've got these all broken down, I think I'm going to go ahead and break them down one more time. So I'm going to call this working files, and then maybe something like completed files. And so the working files, that's going to be like my PSD. That's a working file for sure. PNG, that's going to be a completed file. PDF, completed file. JPEG, completed file. EPS, completed file. Fonts, okay? Fonts, they're going to fall into the working files. How about the AI files? Well, that one's a little bit of both. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a second folder here in completed files called AI files. And inside of there, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my CMYK logo one, my grayscale logo one, and my spot logo one. And then I will move them to there. And then inside of these AI files, there's my layered logos, there's my tri logo. Okay, so I have those. I'll put those in my working files. So now, and this is for treatment 1, right? So let's make one more folder here, and I'm going to call it treatment 1 for my logo project. And inside treatment 1, I've got those working files, so I can go and edit some more. And then I also have the completed files. So that way my client or whoever I hand this off to knows where to go when they want to just get the files that they can use automatically. They also know where to go to find the files, the base files, that they can then go ahead and use to go ahead and edit this thing further if necessary. So this is what you're going to do in your assignment. You're going to end up creating 2 treatment folders, and each one of them will include all of these different pieces in there, and that way you're going to have that. There's going to be one more file that you're going to make, and I'm going to show that in the next video, and that's going to be kind of like a presentation file, and it's really going to be helpful for you for your things like your portfolio. All right, thank you.